The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in Courtroom 7, casting harsh shadows across the wooden benches. 17-year-old Marcus Williams stood at the defendant's table, his pressed white shirt slightly too big for his thin frame. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from rage he fought to contain. Behind him, his mother Clara sat in the front row, her eyes red from sleepless nights. The air felt thick, suffocating. Every person in that room had already decided his guilt before a single word was spoken. Judge Theodore Brennan sat elevated on his bench, gray hair perfectly combed, expensive suit crisp and commanding. His eyes, cold as winter steel, fixed on Marcus with undisguised contempt. This was supposed to be justice. This was supposed to be fair. But Marcus knew better. He had known from the moment he walked through those doors. The bailiff called the court to order. Judge Brennan shuffled papers on his desk, not even bothering to look up as he spoke. Marcus Williams, you stand accused of breaking into Henderson Electronics on the night of March 15th and stealing approximately $12,000 worth of equipment. How do you plead? His voice dripped with boredom, as if this case, this life, meant nothing. Marcus's attorney, a young public defender named James Chen, stood up quickly. Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. We have evidence that will clearly demonstrate. Judge Brennan slammed his gavel down, the crack echoing like a gunshot. I will decide what evidence is relevant here, Counselor. Sit down. James hesitated, then slowly lowered himself back into his chair. Marcus clenched his jaw, fingers gripping the edge of the table. The prosecutor, a woman in her 40s named Sandra Mills, stood with confidence. She laid out the case against Marcus with practiced efficiency. A witness claimed to see someone matching Marcus's description near the store. Marcus's fingerprints were found on the back door. Case closed. Simple as that. Judge Brennan leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Son, let me tell you something about your future. Boys like you, from neighborhoods like yours, they always end up here. This is just the beginning for you. Theft today, something worse tomorrow. I have seen 100 cases just like this. The words hung in the air like poison. Clara Williams gasped from the gallery, covering her mouth. James Chen shot to his feet again. Your Honor, that is completely inappropriate and prejudicial. Counselor, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt. Do you understand me? Brennan's voice was ice. James sat down, defeated. The judge continued, addressing Marcus directly now. You want to stand there and tell me you are innocent. You want me to believe that your fingerprints just magically appeared on that door. That the witness just happened to mistake you for someone else. He laughed, a cruel sound that made several people in the gallery shift uncomfortably. I am going to make an example out of you. 5 years in juvenile detention, and when you turn 18, we will see about extending that sentence. But Marcus did not break. He stood straighter, his brown eyes meeting the judge's gaze without flinching. Something shifted in his expression, a quiet confidence that had not been there before. He reached down to the folder he had been clutching since entering the courtroom. It was worn, edges frayed, stuffed with papers. Judge Brennan noticed the movement. What is that? You planning to show me some homework assignment? A good report card? That is not going to help you now, boy. Marcus spoke for the first time, his voice clear and steady. Your Honor, I know who really robbed Henderson Electronics. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Sandra Mills stood up. Your Honor, this is a desperate attempt to. No. Marcus's voice cut through the noise. I know who did it because I was there. I was there trying to stop it. And I know exactly why you want to convict me so badly, Judge Brennan. The judge's face went pale, then flushed red with anger. You better watch your mouth, son. You are already facing serious time. Your son, Brennan Brennan, robbed that store. The words dropped like a bomb. Complete silence fell over the courtroom. Judge Brennan stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is outrageous. Bailiff, remove this. Marcus opened the folder, pulling out photographs. He held them up high enough for everyone to see. This is security camera footage from the convenience store across the street. Time stamped at 11:47 p.m. on March 15th. That is your son, Brendan, entering Henderson Electronics through the back door. James Chen jumped up, moving closer to see the photos. Sandra Mills approached as well, her confident expression cracking. Marcus continued, his voice growing stronger. I was walking home from my job at the diner that night. I saw Brendan and two of his friends breaking in. I recognized him from school. I called the police immediately. But when I tried to stop them, Brendan shoved me against the door. That is how my fingerprints got there. That is why I was at the scene. Judge Brennan's face had gone from red to ash gray. This is fabricated. You are lying. Marcus pulled out more papers. Here are phone records showing my 911 call at 11:50 p.m. Here is a statement from Mrs. Patterson who lives above Henderson Electronics. She heard the commotion, looked out her window, and saw Brendan and his friends running away. She saw me on the phone with police. He placed another document on the table. And here is a withdrawal receipt from Brendan's bank account 2 days after the robbery, depositing $11,800 in cash. The courtroom exploded into chaos. People were shouting, standing, pointing. The bailiff moved toward Marcus, but James Chen stepped between them. Your Honor, I need to examine this evidence immediately. Sandra Mills was already at the defendant's table, looking through the photographs with wide eyes. Her hands shook slightly as she picked up each piece of paper. Where did you get all this? She asked Marcus quietly. I have been working on this for 3 months, Marcus said. Every day since I was arrested. My mom used her savings to hire a private investigator after the police refused to follow up on my statement. The security footage, the witness, the bank records, it is all real. It is all verified. He turned to face Judge Brennan directly. You knew. When you saw my name on this case, you knew your son was involved. That is why you pushed so hard for this trial. That is why you kept dismissing evidence. You wanted me convicted before anyone could look too closely. Judge Brennan tried to speak, but no words came out. His authority, his power, everything that made him untouchable, was crumbling. A door at the back of the courtroom opened. A young man in his early 20s walked in, flanked by 2 police officers. Brennan looked exactly like the person in the security photos. His face went white when he saw Marcus standing there, holding up the evidence. No, no, no. Brennan muttered, trying to back out, but the officers held him firmly. Marcus pointed at him. That is him. That is who robbed Henderson Electronics. Ask him where he got the money to buy that new car 2 weeks after the robbery. Ask him where he was on March 15th at midnight. One of the officers, Detective Lisa Gomez, stepped forward. She had been investigating on her own after Marcus's private investigator brought the evidence to her attention. Brennan, you are under arrest for burglary, theft, and filing a false police report. You have the right to remain silent. The rest of her words were drowned out by the commotion. Judge Brennan finally found his voice. Wait. There must be some mistake. My son would never. Your son robbed that store with 2 accomplices, framed an innocent teenager, and you tried to railroad that teenager into prison to cover it up. Detective Gomez's voice was hard as granite. And you, Judge Brennan, are under investigation for obstruction of justice and judicial misconduct. Step down from that bench. Now. For a moment, Theodore Brennan stood frozen, his world collapsing around him. Then, slowly, He descended from the bench that had given him so much power, so much authority to destroy lives with prejudice and contempt. Marcus watched him, feeling the weight of 3 months lift from his shoulders. Sandra Mills turned to James Chen. I am dropping all charges against Marcus Williams immediately. This case is dismissed with prejudice. She looked at Marcus, genuine regret in her eyes. I am sorry. I should have looked deeper. I should have listened. Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak yet. His mother rushed forward from the gallery, wrapping him in her arms. She was crying, shaking, holding him like she would never let go. My baby, I knew. I always knew. The courtroom was still chaos, reporters rushing in, cameras flashing, people demanding answers. But Marcus stood in the center of it all, feeling something he had not felt in 3 months. Peace. Justice Judge Brennan was led out by court officers, his son Brennan following in handcuffs. As they passed Marcus, Brennan looked at him with hatred. You ruined my life, he hissed. Marcus met his eyes calmly. No. You did that yourself when you decided my life was worth less than your freedom. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun felt warm on Marcus's face. A crowd had gathered, news vans lined the street, but Marcus ignored them all. James Chen put a hand on his shoulder. You did an incredible thing in there. Most people would have given up. I could not give up, Marcus said quietly. If I gave up, then everyone who ever looked at me the way Judge Brennan did, they win. I had to fight. Not just for me, but for everyone who comes after me. His mother stood beside him, tears still streaming down her face, but smiling now. What happens next? She asked. Marcus looked back at the courthouse, at the marble columns and the words carved above the entrance, justice for all. For so long, those words had felt like a cruel joke. But today, standing here free and vindicated, they meant something again. Next, I go back to school. I finish my education. And maybe, one day, I become a lawyer. He smiled, the first real smile in months. Because if this taught me anything, it is that the system only works when good people refuse to let it be corrupted. When people stand up and fight, even when everyone has already decided you are guilty. Detective Gomez approached them, handing Marcus a business card. If you ever need anything, you call me. What you did today, collecting all that evidence, staying strong under that pressure, that takes real courage. You have a future ahead of you, Marcus. A bright one. As they walked down the courthouse steps, Clara Williams held her son close. The news cameras captured the moment, a young black teenager who refused to be broken, who fought against a rigged system and won. Behind them, inside that courtroom, the wheels of real justice were finally turning. Judge Theodore Brennan would face disciplinary hearings, likely disbarment. Brennan would stand trial for his crimes. And the story of Marcus Williams would spread, a reminder that truth and courage could still triumph over prejudice and corruption. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Marcus walked with his head held high, no longer a defendant, no longer accused. Just a young man who had stared down injustice and refused to blink. Hope. That was what filled him now. Hope that tomorrow would be better. Hope that his fight had mattered. Hope that the next Marcus Williams who stood in that courtroom would be judged fairly, without prejudice, without contempt. Justice was not just a word carved in marble. It was something worth fighting for, worth suffering for, worth believing in even when the whole world seemed determined to deny it. And on this day, in Courtroom 7, justice had finally, truly, been served.